Thank you for watching another episode of Digging In. Jason Andera, Midco Sports, Haley Dodseth, Volleyball, Adrenaline Volleyball, and we are excited to be coming down the home stretch in volleyball. And we're going to talk a little bit today about some impacts of the playoff picture. We're going to talk about some teams getting hot and some teams that have some challenges coming into the last part of the season. Let's start off with who's hot right now in a couple teams in Class B we want to get to for sure, and a Class A team as well.
Yeah, I think Faulkton's one of those teams where you have to talk about come the end of the season. They've always kind of, I guess, really improved throughout the season, which is a really good on Coach Schlechter and that crew. But they have a really big couple matches up towards the end of the season that could really affect their power points, and the math on that totally still over our heads. So I don't know exactly how many points they are able to accrue or how much that changes
But they need to
things.
because their region is tough.
Yes. But they play Wagner tonight, which will be a huge match for any postseason indicator. And then they also have Wolsey-Wessington, a rematch for them, and then Roncalli. So definitely a team who has been on the up and up, but has a really tough stretch coming up here. And then Northwestern, another Class B team who had a rough stretch in the middle of the season. They finally got their Max Stoltenberg back, big lefty, so they're looking really good. Had a great tournament last weekend, so they get back on the Who's Hot list.
Yeah, I'm interested about this Northwestern team because always high expectations at Northwestern. Not familiar with losing, to see how they bounce back, and they've bounced back pretty well off of that. And they've got some talent. They just play a lot different style than they have in the last couple of years, which makes them a little bit more up and down, I think.
Yeah, I think, as a player who maybe isn't in one of those key roles, watching maybe from the bench or from a younger team, it can be kind of a hit to the ego to not go, what was Northwestern, 25-0 for the past couple of years?
Haven't lost in like 4 years or something. Not quite, but.
So it can be hard to kind of take that, but I think they've done, like you said, a great job of bouncing back and kind of learning who they are now and knowing that they could be different from the past, and that can be a good thing. But another team who I think has been on a roll kind of under the radar has been Wagner. They're on a 10-match win streak, which is big for them, and kind of looking to make a mid to late season push to push their power points up. Right now they're sitting at 5th. On the power points list and 5th in our power poll as well. So a team that could make a difference here come late in the season.
This is a team that is still like learning to play with each other. There's a few pieces that have come from different schools that have transferred to Wagner, and not a senior-laden team. So I think the ceiling for this team continues to get higher and higher. They've got some potential.
Yeah, and I think they were even part of the reshuffling earlier this year, so they're in a new region. And
right.
I've been really impressed with Emma Yost. Like you said, not a ton of seniors on the roster, but she's consistently leading the team, that junior outside. So, I think, like you said, the ceiling is high. They're 19-4, which is a really good record. So we'll see what they can take to the postseason.
They've got a run coming up in them. I wanted to talk about Roosevelt and a team. We talk about who's hot. Sometimes we're talking about 10-match streaks, or they've won just a couple in a row now. But they came back from down 2-0 to Huron, and were able to get a victory in that one. They've got 3 wins in a row. They beat a Jefferson team that's on the up and come. That was a good booster for them, and now they get into a tougher part of their schedule. They needed those couple wins. These Sioux Falls schools, it's been so up and down with these teams, and I think Roosevelt is hitting their high right about now.
Yeah, and we think back to last year, that Roosevelt team, who was very junior heavy, took down a number 2 Watertown in the first round of the state tournament. So I think they're kind of used to being that underdog. I'm not sure they're maybe positioning themselves to be the underdog all the time.
Not quite, but we're not. They're not the first breath when you're talking about these top teams in Double A right now.
But I think what they do, and why you see them push towards the end of the season, is they do a really good job of learning throughout the season. Yeah. So they go to players that have had success against certain teams, and I think they're coached really well and will always kind of be better towards the end of the season.
Yeah, a lot of those juniors now, seniors with Maya Vanderbeck and Abby Ward and Liz Denovan, they'll provide a lot of leadership going down the stretch. So that's a team definitely to keep an eye on. Let's talk about some difference makers, some players that have really made a difference and have the potential to make a difference on their team's outcome in these next couple of weeks.
Yeah, so I want to talk about Daniela Lee, who isn't the top kill leader in a Coleman team, which, by the way, I would just like to point out that we called them a Who's Hot team the other week, and they took the very first couple sets off of Bridgewater Emory,
an undefeated team,
who just snuck out of that match. I think it was 16-14 in the fifth, so definitely keep your eye on Coleman. But Daniela Lee does a really good job of being that difference maker. I think that's her exact kind of role. Yeah. Haley Larson and Mackenzie Hemmer do a really good job of leading the offense of that team. But teams are going to key in on them, and I think we saw that during that Bridgewater Emory match. So Daniela had to step up, and she had some kind of weird kills at certain points, but she's okay to step up, and she's just a sophomore, and I think she's going to be a name to watch in the future.
That's fun when you have a sophomore you can plug in like that, and this is another team that they're starting to look more like a program than just a good team. This Coleman group is really promising, so looking forward to seeing them. I wanted to bring up Audrey Nelson, another young sophomore that we want to talk about from Madison. And the Madison team has been so good for so long this year. Don't have quite the leadership at the top, but I think Audrey Nelson's one that is going to really gained some ground becoming a leader. She's had some really big games, a 21 kill game against Millbank. She had 4 blocks in that game. She helped push Dakota Valley to 4 sets, which for Madison, they've had a couple good wins and a couple losses that they'd like to get back. For them, that's a confidence builder to be able to play with Dakota Valley for a while. She had 21 kills and 8 blocks in that game. So, they are a team that's trying to replace somebody in the middle who were so dominant last year in Brooks, that I think it's going to be important for them to get Audrey Nelson to become a leader, even though she's just a sophomore. Yeah,
I think she is so physical. She's so long and can get to a lot of balls in the air as a middle. I think Kruzmark does a really good job of setting her. They just have to be able to get her the ball more, I think, which can be hard. Again, when you are talking about a middle, that comes down more to defense and making sure you're in system and all that good stuff. But we've been so impressed with Nelson this season, and to think back to last year, she was almost kind of a setter too. Yeah. It's just weird because she looks so at home in the middle.
Interesting. Yeah, well, Madison's going to have to make quite a run just to make it back to state. It would be a huge accomplishment for them with that young team that they have. So definitely a difference maker coming up in these next couple weeks. Statement match time. Warner versus Faulkton. This group of Class B teams, I've gone all season going back and forth who I think is in the top tier, second tier, third tier, and we got 2 teams here that have a chance to really say we're on the right track heading toward the playoffs. Yeah,
I think whoever comes out on top is going to have, it's really going to be a confidence booster for them, which is why it's on our statement matches. Warner has kind of been trying to, I don't want to say rebuild, but get through kind of the thick of their season. They had a tough streak there in the middle, but Faulkton's really on the up and up. So I think it could be just another stepping ladder for Faulkton, but could also be, a breath of fresh air for Warner. And I think these 2 teams are very similar in the fact that maybe they don't have all the height in the world, but they have a lot of that gritty toughness. So I think it'll be a really good match.
Yeah, and some people think Warner may be as good as the number 2 team in the class. Some people think maybe they've dropped down past that first tier. This will be a chance for them to figure out what track they're on as we head close to the playoffs. We also want to talk about Brandon Valley. They have a tough matchup coming up with Washington, who continues to just go out and do their job and win. Interesting matchup here between 2 teams that have a lot of parallels.
Yeah, I think while Washington obviously might have a little bit more of that height advantage, they play a really similar style game. They both are very even offensively. They don't have, that single go-to player that they key in on every single match. Both teams, find out who's hot, and the setter does a really good job of going to whoever's hot. I think Liz Kopp has been killing it, and we've been talking about Macy Melchow quite a bit. So I think if Brandon Valley can find a hot hand and really solidify a couple sets under their belt, this might be an upset that can bring them up through the rest of the season. And then Washington just needs to know that they need to play their game and get their job done.
Yeah, and this Washington team, you talked about it. There's so many different players that can come in and may have a big game. Same way with Brandon Valley. I think they've got a lot of different attackers that could be fun to watch as we go down the stretch here. Another team in AA we want to bring up is Harrisburg. This is a team that's got an interesting stretch coming up. Aberdeen Central, this Thursday, and then they've got Sioux Falls Christian coming up next Tuesday, and Sioux Falls Christian is throwing a wrench into a lot of these AA teams, and they've looked like the best team in the state. They beat O'Gorman last weekend, and then they've got Brandon Valley and O'Gorman the following week. So Harrisburg has a chance really to make a statement with their next 4 matches.
Yeah, I think they're one of those teams that have an interesting mix of young and old players. So I think this will be really telling for how they work together in those moments. You know, some of these athletes are 4 years apart. And I think, you know, one storyline that we rarely even talk about is just different things that affect a volleyball team throughout the season. Tests. Like these girls have school and homework and homecoming and all that sort of stuff. So, you know, I think sometimes we forget about all the ups and downs that come throughout a season. And, you know, a team like Harrisburg heading into a stretch like this is going to be really telling how they can deal with all those different aspects.
Because right now they feel like they're on, you know, they're outside of Washington and O'Gorman, as we talked about at the top, but right now they've been the most consistent team other than those two. But they have a chance to really consider themselves more of a contender if they can get maybe a couple of wins in that next 4 games. It's going to be quite a run for the Tigers. All right, in the free ball section, we're going to talk about some potential playoff picture storylines, and we say potential because it's still a couple weeks away, but there's some things developing that really could swing the way the seedings go or things like that. We were just talking about Lincoln as a team maybe in the top 4, and they've fallen off a little bit. Can they get things back together, and how does that affect them being a lower seed coming into the playoffs?
Yeah, I think, you know, a team like Lincoln, who just missed out on state last year and who had a pretty good showing at state the year before with a lot of the same pieces, you know, Bryn Kirsch and Bailey Plurd, who played as sophomores in that state tournament team, are seniors now, and I'm sure they'd like to be back on that big stage. But yeah, just having a tough stretch, and we'll see how the next week or so affects them if they're able to bounce back or not.
Yeah, this is a team that we know can play with the top teams in the state, so they've got that potential, but had a tough time with Watertown. They need to get something going here in the next couple of weeks. We also want to talk about Jefferson. This is a team that feels like with so many young players, they've made some changes in their rotation, and it feels like they're on the way up, even though the record might not reflect that.
Yeah, you know, they're a young team, and a lot of times with young teams, those tight matches can kind of be tough with, you know, not having a super senior dominated team to have someone step up in. So I think those can kind of be those dangerous teams come postseason too, because their emotions are up and down, and say they take a set off of Washington all of a sudden and now they're riding a high and no one can stop them. So I think that's the really interesting storyline about Jefferson, is that there's just so much unknown with them. Yeah,
a lot of potential there. In Class A, as you look at the fight for maybe that top 4 seeds, I mean, we're looking way ahead past the Soda Hex 16 into the tournament, but you really do want to be a top 4 seed. There's teams like MVP, Sanborn, Woonsocket, Sanborn Central, Belle Fourche. Could they push Rapid City Christian kind of out of that group? Hill City's right on that top 4 cusp. There's some teams in that 5 through 10 area that could really mess things up for those top 4 teams right now.
Yeah, and I think without knowing all the seed point formulas, that's, you know, like we said, way over our heads, and without knowing all their schedules, I think, like you said, the next couple weeks is going to be very telling, and we might see a huge shuffle in a bunch of the Class A schools. So I guess just a storyline to keep your eyes out on, because who really knows? Yeah,
because right now the storyline has been Sioux Falls Christian, how dominant they've been in Class A. They continue to win games against even Class AA teams. They challenge themselves with some good Iowa teams. That seems like the story in Class A, but there's a lot more going on in the seedings to check out. We'll get deeper into that in the next couple of weeks. In Class B, there are, you look at that top 16 to make the SODAC 16, you get a couple out of each region. There's a lot of tweeners right now that could have a tough time making it. You got Aberdeen Christian, Northwestern, Roncalli, all in the same region. Warner, Miller, Potter County, Castlewood. Castlewood might not make it. Wolsey, Westington, Coleman, Egan, as well as they're playing, they're in a tough region as well, and they're going to have a tough time making it to the SODAC 16.
Yeah, I know. You're looking at even this 1B region with Northwestern, Warner, Aberdeen Christian, Roncalli. I think between those 4 teams, all of them were number 1 on our power poll at one point. That's how just crazy this Class B mix-up has been. And you talk about Coleman Egan, who's in a region with Bridgewater, Emory, and Chester, 2 really solid teams as well. So I think a lot of these teams really want to keep it solid for the next couple weeks to boost their points as much as possible. But I was even talking to Coach Schlechter of Faulkton the other day, and she said, it's just you play on whatever given night, and that's just all you can do right now in Class B. And I think that speaks perfectly for what these teams are trying to do, is just do their best on every night.
Yeah, it's hard not to look ahead. I mean, I know all the coaches have done all the formulas and know what they need, but you have to have your team playing that night and worrying about what's in front of you. So a lot of storylines to keep an eye on in all of the 3 classes right now, and we're still just a couple weeks away from those playoffs, but before you know it, that's going to hit us. Anything we should know about Adrenaline Volleyball that you guys are working on?
We're still working on our postseason stuff, so make sure to keep track of that all on our Instagram page, so at adrenaline_volleyball. And then we do have an exciting announcement possibly coming in the next couple days. Still finalizing that, so again, keep track of our Instagram, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of teasing on there. But just getting ready for postseason. The air is chilling out, and I think it's time for some postseason volleyball.
Yes, it's time for some postseason volleyball. We are looking forward to it. We'll keep track of everything coming up in volleyball with Digging In every Thursday, and we appreciate you watching.